the first church that he writes a letter to is Ephesus. So this will sound familiar because the Christians in Ephesus were called Ephesians. Okay, so Paul, the real Paul this time, Paul actually wrote a letter to the Ephesians, and we have that in the New Testament. And so Jesus also sends a letter to the Ephesians, Christians. And this, of all those 7 churches, this is the only one that overlaps with a letter to Paul. So the Ephesian Christians got double letters. So they paid a lot of attention to the Ephesian Christians. So let's see. Let me start off by telling you a little bit about Ephesus. So Ephesus was a very worldly city, and you can see the ruins of the city here. This was the Colosseum, and it had some beautiful, beautiful architecture. This roadway going through, just some amazing structures and architecture at the time. This is an artist's rendition of what the city would have looked like during its, when it was actually functioning as a city. But it was a very, very worldly city. It was the center of the worship of the goddess Diana. And so I think that do you see that structure, that temple at the very back there? I think that probably have been the temple to the goddess Diana. So there was a lot of witchcraft. There was sorcery. There was satanic worship, and lots of just really bad, wicked stuff going on in Ephesus. And so the Ephesian Christians were surrounded by all of this wickedness. In fact, Paul, when he visited them, he warned them about this. And so we see this in Acts 20. Paul had been visiting with them for several years. And when he is getting ready to leave, he tells them this. He says, I know that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves, men will arise, speaking perverse things to draw away the disciples after them. Therefore, be on the alert, remembering that night and day for a period of 3 years, I did not cease to admonish each one with tears. And now I entrust you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you the inheritance among all those who are sanctified. And that is in Acts 20. So Paul had given them this warning because of the wickedness of the culture that was surrounding them. So let's see what Jesus tells them in his letter. So he starts off by saying, to the angel of the church in Ephesus. So remember, Jesus himself, he was holding in the vision, holding 7 stars in his hand. And he told John, these stars represent the angels of each of the churches. Now, some people believe that these were written to actual angels who were assigned to each of the churches. That's what I believe. But other people believe that the word that is used for angel here also could mean messenger. So other people believe it was simply addressed to the leader, whoever the pastor was of the church at the time. Okay, so we don't know for sure. Okay, so Jesus says, the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 golden lampstands says this. So that's the way he introduces himself here, just simply describing the vision. So here's what he says to the Ephesian Christians. I know your deeds and your labor and perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil people. And you have put those who call themselves apostles to the test, and they are not. They're not apostles, and you have found them to be false. And you have perseverance and have endured on account of my name and have not become weary. So Jesus starts off by saying, these are the things you're doing right, Ephesians. You're doing all of these good deeds. You are laboring, persevering. You are doing all these works. You have paid attention to the warning that Paul gave you, and you are separating yourself from the wickedness of your culture, and you are being very pure and focusing on holiness, and you are testing the spirits. Okay, so he says, good job, Ephesians. But then he says this, but I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Therefore, remember from where you have fallen and repent and do the deeds that you did at first. Or else I am coming to you and I will remove your lampstand from its place unless you repent. So what is Jesus saying here? So I believe that what Jesus is saying is, okay, you paid attention to what the warning that Paul gave you, but then you took it too far the other way and you fell into legalism. And I believe that is what he is saying has happened to the Ephesian Christians, that they have left their first love, who was Jesus Christ. And instead of focusing on their relationship with Jesus Christ, they now have become legalistic. And you know what happens when your faith becomes legalistic? Instead of it being a life-giving relationship with Jesus Christ, it becomes a cold, dead system of following rules. And I think that's what's happened here to the Ephesians. And he says, remember from where you have fallen and repent. So a lot of times what we see, and I grew up in legalistic church with a legalistic mother, so I know this very, very, very intimately, that a lot of times when these legalistic Christians, what they put themselves back under the law. And so they are trying to save themselves, basically, by following the rules, by being really good at following rules. And so a lot of times they can become very arrogant because they are trying to save themselves. And they think they can save themselves by being very good at following rules. And so a lot of times you see that these people they're bullies and they're mean and they look down on people who don't follow their particular rules. And Jesus, I think, that's why he's telling them, remember from where you have fallen. You are no better than anyone else. You are a sinner, just like everyone else. And it is only by God's grace, by the grace of Jesus Christ, through his blood, that any of us are saved. And so Jesus says, repent of that. Do the deeds that you did at first when you were in love with Jesus Christ, when you were focusing on Jesus instead of on following these rules. And what does Jesus say he's going to do if they do not repent of this? He says, I am coming to you, and I will remove your lampstand from its place. So remember, each of these 7 lampstands represented the 7 churches. Okay, so what happens when a church falls into legalism? They are no longer shining light of Jesus Christ, because what happens when they fall into this legalistic, cold, dead system of rules? Then they are pushing people away from Jesus. So Jesus says, I will remove the lampstand from you. You will no longer be shining my light. And then he says this, but you have this. You hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. So what in the world is he talking about there? Who are these Nicolaitans? He'll mention them again in another later letter. So Nicolaitans were the people who followed Nicholas of Antioch. And Nicholas of Antioch at one point had made a profession of faith that he was a Christian. Maybe he had followed Jesus for a while, but then he ended up kind of going off in a weird way and took a bunch of followers with him, and had ended up going off into apostasy and really embracing the world, abusing the grace and forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And so Nicolaitans practiced sexual immorality, and they would practice some pagan worship practices, eating food that had been sacrificed to idols. So Jesus says, yes, it's good that you hate them, because I hate those deeds too. So, and I think that the modern day equivalent of the Nicolaitans would be like the woke churches, like progressive Christianity. I've talked about this before, and this progressive theology that says that all religions lead to the same God, which is absolutely not biblical, absolutely not Christian. So that's why I believe the Nicolaitans were apostates. They were not Christians. And Jesus says he hates their deeds. Okay, then he says, the one who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches, to the one who overcomes. So the people who do repent of their legalism, what does he do? He says, I will grant to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. So for legalistic Christians, they put themselves back under the law. This is a way of death. So Jesus says, if you will repent of that, come back to me, your first love, then I will grant you to eat from the tree of life, because the tree of life is Jesus. Focusing on your relationship with Jesus is the way of life. Okay, so that is the Ephesians.